Guess who's back?
Yay.
Back
Everybody.
Again.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We're back.
We're back. Like we ain't never left.
How's everybody been?
Good?
Good.
Great. You been good? Okay, good. That's a lie. But all right, thank you for trying to stay positive. All right, so it's been a minute.
Yes. With the pandemic and
just life.
Yeah.
I mean, you have like a whole little person
I
running
know.
around those
I
stairs.
do. He's not so little anymore.
No.
He's getting
Y'all
big.
want to see him? So I kept some pictures to the side so I can show y'all what he looked like now. Look at this cuteness. Look at him.
I have a plug too. This picture is from, he's wearing a clothing line called Happy Little One. Please go check them out. It's a really dope clothing line. Two moms, I think they're sisters. They started it. They're local to South Florida. And the clothes are stain resistant, quick dry. They don't fade, which if you have little ones and you buy something, you wash it and like that's it. You can't use it anymore, or they slob and it stays wet all day. So these clothes are made to combat that. So go check it out, Happy Little One. I'll put the link wherever we post this.
I don't got kids, so I'm just gonna smile and nod. All right, so it's been a minute, but we'll just jump right in. Gonna start this thing back up.
A lot to talk about.
And I feel like the universe has been a little off because it needs us to talk about some of the things going on. So typically we would start off with something to celebrate, pop our little champagne or whatever. We already got our bottles. We had to, or our drinks, our bottles. We already got our drinks because we had to, catch up a little bit too. We've been quarantined and isolated. I haven't seen the baby. But I think what we have to celebrate right now is just coming back.
Yeah. We're back.
I know. I'm happy to be back. I really
Me
am.
too. It feels like we never left though.
It really does. Like I was thinking the other day when a memory came up, I think it was like from our Facebook Live about when they see us.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, that was so controversial at that time. And like from then to now, like just seeing like how things have escalated is crazy.
I know.
It's crazy.
I
But
know.
this time definitely feels different. I feel like the conversations have changed a lot for the good because a lot of bad is happening, but I think that this is not going to be just another hashtag.
Right.
Just we get mad and get over it. I think that's starting to show because now as it's happening, there's a reaction, and I don't really care about people being mad about burning stuff down, burn it all down for all I care because we're tired. And that's just that.
Yeah, and I think what I feel hopeful about is that I've seen, like you said, the conversation change, the conversation be different groups of people joining in on the conversation, realizing that it's not just one group of people's problem, and that it's like all of our problem, and that everyone kind of has to do the work. It's not just about, oh, I empathize with you, so sorry about that, and then go back about your business, but people are actually realizing, okay, no, I have to do some work. Let me learn, let me research, let me try and figure out like where somebody else is coming from. So
yeah, I definitely think it feels different this time. So I know I'm not gonna just let it be another hashtag. And I don't blame anybody for that because this is really the first time in our lifetime where it has been beyond just a us problem, and people are really starting to see like, dang, this what y'all been feeling like, this what y'all been going through, like this is not okay. And it's like, yeah, we know, we tried to tell y'all, but y'all didn't really get it. So I'm not mad, or I don't want to make it seem like all the other times that, oh, well, like all the other times you did this, and, I'm hearing other Black people say stuff like that, and it's like, no, like that's because that's what we're taught to do.
Right.
We're taught, we've for generation after generation after generation, we've been taught to survive. We were never taught how to live.
Right.
So
That's
now
true.
I think that we're recognizing that, like, no, and trying to get back to building us as a community. Even though it wasn't during my lifetime, integration, I don't, like, reading back on it, I was like, I wouldn't have been down for that. Like, I just think that everything should have just stayed separate. We built our own, but then you see things like what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it's like, okay, well, we did, and then they burnt that down. So it's like, that's where the discussion of reparations comes. So that's a whole nother discussion. We came here to talk about specifically defunding the police.
Yes. And it's interesting because I think we started this conversation offline because you posted something on Instagram, and then I kind of questioned it. I was like, well, coming from my background and my point of view, I was raised by someone who, my father was in law enforcement.
I was like, why would be a vague?
Yeah, like someone
like he had witness protection.
I'm used to like not really talking about it because growing up, my father worked as an undercover police officer. He worked in different departments that it wasn't really something we talked about. We had to be kind of, it wasn't just, he would always tell us like, don't go out and tell people about what I do. And so I just never really bring it up a lot. But I grew up with a father who worked in law enforcement my whole entire life. And so I do see that side of it when I'm looking at things, but I also see like I'm a black woman. My father's a black man when he takes off his uniform. So I see that side of it. But maybe you should first introduce
I support defunding the police. Okay. Like 100% support it. And another recent post that I made was basically saying that I think a lot of the people that don't support it is just coming from a place of ignorance, and not in a bad way. It's just you don't understand what it means. So in response to that and other things, people have kind of asked. So I've directed them to websites that can break it down a little bit better, or given whatever explanation I have. I don't have like all the statistics running off, like I'm not at the forefront of this, but I do support it. And I support it now coming from a place of a few months ago saying like, you're just gonna defund the police. Like there's already so many issues, and the way our nation deals with things is throwing money at certain things and then taking money away from certain things. And what we've seen and what is normal for us is constantly just like giving more and more money to organizations or systems or whatever, like police. So when the issue with police brutality came up, and then we were all pushing for body cams, and it was like, okay, well obviously they need $50 extra million to get body cams. And one issue that I had is now we're signing petitions and pushing for certain police departments to make it mandatory that the body cams are on. And I'm like, wait, so we pushed we agreed for our tax dollars to go to buy the body cams, but the police
found a loophole.
Officer gets to decide whether or not they turn it on. Like I was flabbergasted, okay, because I think it was actually in Broward County, one of the assistant state attorneys, she was pushing to make it might or might not have been Broward County, I've just read so many whatever. She was pushing to basically where if you don't have body cam footage, and then the person they can't, their charge cannot go through, they cannot be convicted of their charge. Like that is a check mark. Like, okay, well, you have this proof, you have this, okay, you can meet this element, you can prove this, you can establish this, it was a good warrant, whatever. You have body cam, or you don't have body cam, okay, like no problem, just throw it away. And I think that's great. But I was like, wait, they just turned it off. Like, because it's crazy. Like, what was the point of giving all that money? And then they're still asking for it. That's one of the things that the Republicans, their bill and I guess response to everything going on is additional funding for body cams. And I'm like, bruh, but they can't. So then it's gonna be a 3-step process now. We're gonna say, okay, get them body cams and then make them keep it on, and then make that be a factor into determining whether or not the person that was arrested be charged. Like, that just blows my mind. So I guess I'll start off with just explaining that defunding the police does not mean we just turn the light switch off on police altogether. There are some groups that are calling for and that advocate for abolishing police. And I think that that's what people think of when they think of defunding the police. And I'm not even going to say that I'm against abolishing the police, but I do not think that, because there is at least one group that I know of that they do think that it can be something where you just turn the switch off, like the police are just gone. I don't see that yet. So while I do see abolishing the police being in the future, I'm not there yet, and I do not agree that it's something that we can just flip the switch and it's just like, okay, no police anymore. I'm very much like, I don't rock with them. Like, I can't think of any situation where I would voluntarily call the police. I just think that they do more harm than good most of the time. And at the end of the day, it's like a lottery. So, you know, you call, it's not like you can say, hey, a 911 operator, make sure you send one of the good ones, okay? I'm Black, you know, I want to make sure I don't get one of the racist ones, because you see, you watch the news, you know what happens, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you can't do that. So you literally say, I'm going to call the police on you. And then you end up being the like object of his affection in a bad way when he comes because of whatever reason. Yeah. So defunding the police does not mean abolishing the police. Defunding the police means taking some of the billions upon billions of dollars that go to the police departments away from them. And what do you do with it, you might ask? Well, you invest it and put it into communities that need it, and you allow it to be reallocated to other resources like social work, like counselors, even medical doctors, because police are responding to calls that they have no business going to. Police should not be responding to someone who had a drug overdose. For what? Police should not be even responding to someone, a regular police officer should not be responding to someone who is trying to commit suicide. They're not trained for that. Police should not be called to respond to someone who's just being homeless. They're not doing anything wrong, they're just homeless and they're trying to sleep. Police should not come there and wreck up their stuff and take them to jail. That's not the response. That should be for people that are trained to deal with that particular issue. And police are not trained and should not be trained. I think police are, there's a quote I heard a while ago that's like, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail or something like that. I might be saying it wrong. But I think of police as like a hammer. So it's like everything's a nail. Like they have like this one setting and that's it. And it's one setting for a type of person or a type of police officer. So one police officer might just be super chill towards everyone. One police officer might be, I'm gonna treat Black people like this and other people like this, because we all know that it's two systems and it's two types of policing based upon your race. So I just think overall, I hear y'all Blue Lives Matter. I say the hell with y'all too. But yeah, I just think that it is a misallocation of funds. They have too much money, and it pissed me off to see them with these shiny new uniforms, these pretty little shields. I just posted a video on Instagram, me in front of a tank from the rescue police in Broward County. I'm like, dang, we got tanks? Because what's the point of calling in the National Guard if you already have all these things? Why do we have tanks and all of this riot gear for just police officers? These aren't riot police. These are just regular police officers, and they stuff looked nice and shiny and new. But we were in a pandemic, and I was literally like shuffling around and forwarding messages from people saying like, hey, you're a nurse, like y'all good over there at the hospital? Y'all got masks? Oh, okay, well this person just said that, you know, they're gonna donate masks or they're gonna donate this. Why are we like trying to get donations for
the
medical
hospitals
supplies?
don't have what they need, but yet the police are like geared up and ready to go.
OD. So that's my issue. I don't think that police are protecting and serving my community personally. I don't think they're protecting and serving the community at large. And I don't think that it is a situation where we can just throw more money at them and get better training. They need normal training on things like how to properly restrain someone, how to deal with someone who's not armed. Those are the things that they need to deal with, and those things that they need training on. We don't need to give them more money and think that a police officer is ever going to be equipped to handle something that involves like a mental health issue and handle a robbery. Yeah. Like there's just two different things. And I just think that our communities need this money because a lot of crimes that are committed are by people who are just desperate. So a lot of people who are stealing food need food. So, I mean, why are we sending these people to jail? Like, that's just not what it should be. Yeah. Someone has a mental health issue, they need counseling. Someone has a drug issue, the war on drugs is a different thing, but someone has a drug issue, the police don't need to be called for that. So I think the 911 needs to have different, same way they say, like, okay, you need fire and rescue, or you need police, or you need paramedics. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's how it should go.
I just think that there needs to be a complete overhaul, because I do agree with defunding the police, but I also think that we need to look at, but in addition to that, I think we need to look at where the funds are being allocated within the police department, because it is not going to the officer that you see on the street. Like that officer
their
is not,
salary has gone down.
Yeah, those officers aren't taking that money home. And so where is that money going? Like it's going to the shiny new tank that you saw the other day, or the new uniforms, or things that don't actually really matter. We're not investing into the real the cops that we're putting out on the street, that we're actually saying, look, hey, we need to look at their behavior. We need to look at, how are you assessing them before you're putting them out on the street? How are you training them before you put them out on the street? And I know I had this conversation with my dad before, and he was saying, yeah, a lot of times, when budgets get cut, the first place it gets cut is our training. Like our training is cut, or we're not given the tools that we need to actually go out on the street. So what you have is police officers on the street that are essentially, there's no excuse. They're a police officer. They took the oath to serve and protect. They took the job where they know that there could be danger. Like they could be sacrificing their life to protect other people. But, I don't feel like the money just isn't going to the right places. I just feel like we need to take a look at that before we do need to defund. We do need to allocate that money to other services. Like you said, I totally agree with that. But I also think that within the organization, there needs to be more transparency. Like we don't know where they're putting this money at. We don't know how they're really training these officers, what they're really doing, what they're telling them. How are they screening these officers? We don't know any. I feel like I don't know any of that. Maybe that information may be out there somewhere. I don't know. And so as a taxpayer, I feel like there needs to be more transparency. We need to, before we look at one chunk of it as far as like defunding them, I think we need to look at the whole picture.
You can see a breakdown of like within the whatever police organization, like how it's broken down. But my issue is like, yeah, they probably get training, but it's probably consistent with the training that's required to even become a police officer. So that's why I feel like eventually I'll move towards like, yeah, just get rid of them, because I find it 100% unacceptable that a police officer is supposed to be revered with so much respect, and they only go to school for 6 months. They're given a gun and a badge and just thrown out there. They oftentimes work in corrupt environments where even if they had good intentions, they either have to like hush it up and keep those like morals to themselves, or they become, their environment. And I think policing in general, considering the history of why police were even created, attracts a certain type of person. And I think that that's obvious to enough people to where that's something that should have been addressed a long time ago. And it should have been revamped. I think it should have even been a situation where it's like, let's just give them a whole new name, because we know the history of policing.
Right.
And why even have that?
Yeah.
But it's because they were policing us, and like don't nobody care about us. So I do agree that it has to be like a revamp, but I think that the revamp should be, let's just give them less and less money, because I don't like the fact that there's no separate board that evaluates a police officer coming in. I don't know what kind of mental health screening they do, but it's not enough. I don't think there's any. But even if they sit down, so if we know at least from TV that if a cop is involved in a police shooting, then they have to like give their weapon, go to counseling, whatever, to make sure they're clear to go back to work. You need counseling before, to make sure your head okay before you get a gun and get the go out there and do what police do. But I just think that we need to move more towards like private organizations that do security and that do the same thing as police officers do within each community. So then that community can be responsible for themselves and say like, this is the, what we're using. I also don't like the fact that they get so much money to do school resources, like be school resource officers. Like police officers should not be in schools.
No.
That's unacceptable. No. That was actually on that show, 13 Reasons Why. Like they just came back to school, there was like a metal detector and police were there. And
true story. The school resource officer that was in my elementary school was actually arrested when I was in high school for molesting girls. So he was there when I was in elementary school. He didn't get caught and arrested till I was in high school. So all those years he had been molesting the little girls in the school. And of course, there was an extra sense of trust because he's an officer. He's walking around in an officer's uniform, and little girls and teachers and administrators and the principals trusted him
because he was a police officer. And that's what I'm saying. So like me as an attorney, if first of all there's character and fitness is evaluated before I can even be allowed to be an attorney. And then once that's approved, so that's beyond me going to school, taking the exam. Those things are hard, but there are people that have Juris Doctorate degrees that can't practice because they got a DUI in their past or something like that, but they decided like, oh, you don't meet the requirements within your character and fitness to be an attorney. But someone just automatically is supposed to be respected and just, you know, taken on as like an officer after 6 months of training at a police academy that doesn't even take into account like, okay, who are you as a person? What's your judgment like? What's your background like? Like, how do you feel about these things? Like, show those little black and white ink dots and see like, okay, what does this look like to you? And like really analyze like a person before they come into the picture, because these police officers, yeah, they might be making 40, 50, 60 or whatever. I don't know. I think it's around there, like starting off, but they get a 6-figure pension. They don't have anyone, you know, regulating them when they get a complaint. If someone calls the bar and makes a complaint on me, they're going to investigate it, determine if there's any basis. If there is a basis, I basically have to go through a trial the same way as someone who's, I don't want to say convicted, but if someone's arrested, then they get an opportunity to go to trial, and then it's determined by a jury or a judge whether or not they are guilty of whatever the allegation is. So it's the same exact thing. Like, we have to go through a trial. You have to do the exact same thing. So if an attorney is accused by someone, the board that decides whether or not there's a basis, they do a separate investigation, and then they say like, yeah, I do think that there's basis here, and then they go through the entire process. And then if the judge says, yeah, I think that, you know, you did this, then the penalty is determined. And there's nothing like that for police officers.
And even if it doesn't go that far, I mean, if I have an encounter with you as an attorney and I don't like it, I could leave your review on Google, and then the next person can go there and see, let me see what the reviews are, what somebody else said, how did they interact with that person, and see that. There's nowhere we can go for that for police officers.
No, and I feel like that there needs to be, because sometimes you have an officer that maybe he works for a decent precinct or whatever, and they say, oh no, we don't tolerate this here, you're gone. They go and get a job somewhere else, and we don't know. So like, now you come into my community, you already have these strikes against you, and we don't know. You just come and bring that negativity over here, and then if the police chief here says like did something else, then you just bounce over to the next one. There needs to be some level of tracking, because if I try to go and practice in another state, that state gets to determine whether or not I meet the requirements for character and fitness on their own. They can take into consideration what this state has said, but they make their own determination. That is name one profession that doesn't do that. You have a board for teachers, you have a board for medical doctors, every single type. You have a board for cosmetologists, you have a board for CPAs. So, but police officers, so that's why I get so frustrated when people are like, well, it's a police officer, so you have to comply. It's like, but bro, like, there's no ramifications. There's no checks and balances in the beginning, and there's no ramifications.
No.
So that's my issue with police, but then I just don't, so that's why I don't think that you can come in, like, I feel like we're already starting off behind. So unless you're going to start all the way from the academy and now all of a sudden make police officers have to go to school for 2 years or have like a college degree, whatever kind of training and education to start with, mental evaluations to start with.
Part of I was reading something that I think you posted earlier today. It was a thread where a young man was giving his experience of, he did a ride along. Right. And so when I read it, I was like, my mind is blown, because he talks about the behavior that his friend was exhibiting as a cop, and how he was kind of trolling for, like, trying to create or drum up business, and trying to drum up some crime or something bad happening.
So if anyone didn't see it, basically he was saying that he did a ride along with, I don't know if it was his friend, but it was someone that he went to school with. So it's someone that he knew before they were a cop. So he said like, oh, I want to do a ride along with you. And he said the first like half of it, or the start of the night, was literally just his friend just driving around, punching in tag numbers to see if someone had something to give him the ability, the reasonable doubt to pull them over. And he said that most of them would be kind of rundown cars, or someone who looked like they didn't belong in that neighborhood, which meant that it was a black person in a white neighborhood. And he said pretty much they were coming up blank. There was nothing.
And then when that didn't work, they would listen on the radio for someone else who had pulled someone over, who had drummed up some business, and they would be like, well, let's just let's just go see what they're up to. Let's go stop in on their call. And he said that on one particular call, you know, it was a man who apparently had just gotten out of prison. He had just been reunited with his family, obviously probably on probation.
Parole.
He was driving. He hadn't had a chance to get his his tag, I think, registered again, or something was expired.
Yeah, it was registration.
Yeah, and so he said, you know, the one cop had stopped him, so he's already there. Obviously, he's really nervous, and then more cops start to come up and show. And you see that. I see it all the time, where you see like 3 or 4 cop cars for one traffic stop, and you look at it because you're like, whoa, what's going on over there? Because there's like 5 cops, and the lights are going, and it's probably just, you know, a traffic ticket or something stupid. And he said, obviously, the more cops that showed up, the more agitated the man got. And then they started to get, you know, aggressive with him. And it just was a whole snowball effect. And so he just said, like, I just saw how the whole system was set up. And he was like, it wasn't even my friend who was just, he wasn't one bad apple. He was just a part of the system. He had been trained to do that, just as all the other cops have been trained to do that. So it's not just, you know, looking at the one individual cop, but it's looking at the whole system of how they're telling these guys to go out there. And so I think that's a part of like looking at, I mean, the transparency and looking at like, what are they doing? Like, what are they telling people? What are they doing behind these closed doors? Like, what are they, I mean, I just want to know, like, who, like, how do we fix that? Like, how do we fix that whole system? Obviously, it's not just
that's why
cut and dry.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I'm not there yet, because I can't see, like, it makes me nervous to think like, okay, you're just gonna get rid of all of them. And then, I mean, I'm fair. Like, if someone woke up one day and was like, yeah, we don't need lawyers, get rid of them, and I'd be like, look, y'all could have given me 2 weeks. Like, y'all could have gave me a couple weeks to try to figure my life out. Like, so I, you know, like, I mean, all cops aren't bad. You know, some of them and some of them got involved because they saw how disgusting police officers are. They grew up in a certain neighborhood where they felt like, you know, they saw that their community was targeted, so they wanted to become that, to be part of the solution. They're not all bad, so I get that, but so that's why I think that, you know, you just don't be like, okay, they're done. You know, give them a year notice, but say like next year you better figure it out. But and God, figure it out, okay? So I do feel like I feel like it's too corrupt. I feel like you don't fix it. I feel like sometimes the car just that raggedy, where you just gotta say, okay, junk this and let me just start over and get a new car. Like, you might think, I don't like having car payments, or, you know, whatever, this car been good to me for 15 years. Okay, well, just, you know, it's too tore down. Don't put a new engine in that. Like, just chunk it. Because I feel like communities can police themselves. I really, really do. Especially when you put these other agencies in place, or utilize current agencies more for what they're designed to do, like social workers. Like, I always felt like social workers were that's such a like commendable job, that they're so unappreciated, they're so underpaid, and I feel like that should be a recipient of more funding, and then they're able to do more because they have more money to do it with, versus just knocking on people's doors and being like, your kid okay, all right, cool, you know. If
we have the communities police themselves, how can we have, I mean, not that there's many checks and balances now, that's why we're in the situation that we are in now. I mean, everything's so corrupt, but how would we have the checks and balances for community policing?
I think it's private companies, so it's within that company. So if there's a problem, then at least if it's that company that you have a problem with, then the same way you can go to a town hall meeting and voice your concerns about things the police are doing or things that are going on in your community, it's the same type of deal. Like, hey, this is happening, that's happening, but at least it's like, it's up to that community to say it's a problem. So like here, you know, you have your HOA meetings and stuff like that. So if they say everybody get a pink mailbox, and you be like, when the next meeting, because it's some BS, you know, and you go and you say, no, we don't want a pink mailbox, then I feel like that's what I think of as a community. You have your own HOA that you pay into, so you feel like, I paid for this voice. Like, I pay taxes, I pay my HOA fees, I comply with everything, so you finna listen to me. And I think that a lot of people will speak up more because it's within their community, and they have that, you know, self kind of, you know, like, you have that confidence and you feel like I earned this opportunity to be able to speak, and like you need to listen to me, versus it being such a big scale, because no one just thinks of their police in their community.
Right.
You think of police as a whole because everywhere has police,
Right.
everywhere has sheriffs, everywhere has troopers, and that's even an example. So you have the highway patrol, which are the troopers. Their response, like they're limited to what their reach is. You can't call 911 and say I have a domestic dispute going on in my house, which I don't think police should go to domestic disputes either. I feel like they make stuff like that worse by just their presence. But a trooper not gonna roll up at somebody and be, you're not gonna see a brown uniform with their, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not their reach.
Right.
So I just feel like it needs to be limited, and then it's for people to come up and say, hey, this is my community here. We got it. Like you don't need to come here the same way the schools are doing it. So the schools are saying like, we're not dealing with, this police department anymore. So people are like, well, what are they going to do? They're going to hire a private company. Like people do the same thing. It's easier to just use the police.
And I definitely think that things would go a lot smoother. We'd see a lot more success if the people who are policing a neighborhood knew the neighborhood. Like, do you know any cops in your neighborhood? Like, do you know any cop names? I mean, we should know that.
I'm not going to say his name, but Sergeant that live on the 3rd floor, I made good friends with him because if I get a speeding ticket.
I mean, but I think the police should know their community. They should know who lives there. They should know the kids should know them. Like there should be a relationship there. I know my dad would say a lot from when he first started early on that a lot of the police officers, they were in neighborhoods that they had never been in before, much less like they had never been there personally, but they had never been in a neighborhood like it ever. Yeah. And so they didn't know how to navigate. They were very nervous. Yeah. They didn't understand some of the lingo. Yeah. They didn't understand how things
work.
And
they don't know the people.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest thing. So like if you imagine if there was like a security guard in just your subdivision and they were like the first point of attack. So you don't call 911. The way y'all do it here is that y'all call the security guard first, and then if he can't handle it, then he'll call whoever or whatever. Right. Kind of like they do with shoplifters. Like they'll call security can't handle it, or they say that the person did it, then they'll call the police. And that security guard, or the couple security guards that work, they're gonna know people. So like if your kid is like doing something, they're gonna be like, now this isn't you. Right. And like you have football coming up, come, let's go talk to your parents. Because they're gonna know them. Now, on the other hand, if there's like some little hoodlums that's always in some trouble, they're gonna be like, this is the 5th time I done had to talk to your parents, I done had to talk to you. Like, do we need to go to the next step? Like, is this what needs to happen? Because they know, versus like every time it's a different person. It's someone who doesn't live there. Right. It's someone who doesn't know the faces, doesn't know the people. And I think it's even worse, the fact they don't even know a neighborhood like it. And I think it's part of the design. I'm sure that there are police officers that are available for hire that come from that direct community, but they would rather take, like I can't tell you how many times you see like a Palm Beach, like I'll see a Palm Beach cop car all the way, like Miami. And it's like, why you didn't get a job in Palm Beach? Right. Or
my gosh, it happens all the time.
Why didn't you get a job here in Miami? Or like what? So, and I think that that's by design, because obviously y'all don't really have no strict requirements for the kind of police that you hire. So like, why couldn't he get a job in Miami? Like what? And I think that they want that.
My dad, I think he said he almost decided not to become a police officer. I think for like 3 or 4 years he wasn't hired where he lived because his brother had a record, so they wouldn't hire him. So he ended up, the only reason why he ended up pursuing it was because another city decided to take a chance on him, which happened to be Delray. And so he was like, okay. And so he was policing. Obviously, there were some similarities there, so that was good. But it wasn't the neighborhood he had grown up in. I mean, how much better would it have been for a police officer to police the neighborhood that he had grown up in, where he knew the kids, where he knew the families.
Well, they think he's just gonna let everybody go. I know you. You're good. You're good.
Right.
And if that's the case, then you're going to know after a couple of months, like, geez, you haven't had any reports, you haven't arrested anyone, what's going on? Yeah. So there's a way to check to see if that's happening, but you can't just make that assumption.
Right.
And that's absolutely what it is, because I applied for the state attorney's office in Fort Pierce, and there were like 3 hypotheticals back to back about like, well, what if your cousin, I was like, I don't have any cousins that live here. well, like, what if you're someone that you went to high school with, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, listen, I see what you're doing here, but, like, I would be hired to do a job. I would do my job. Like, me being from here has nothing to do with anything that we need to be discussing in this interview. And he's like, okay, I understand what you're saying. But what if, like, still went into another one, and I'm like, bro. And I started calling off some of the state attorneys that were also from Fort Pierce. And I'm like, I mean, is that an issue that you're having? Is that why you're asking the question? I didn't get the job, obviously.
Well, but
that's how they look at it, but they only look at it like that for us.
Right. That's what I hate when those rules are only implemented because you want to, like, create the environment that you want to create. It's not really for the betterment of anything. I mean, this is a whole other episode. I watched the Jeffrey Epstein documentary on Netflix, and to see that the backdoor deal that was made with the what is it, the district attorney or whoever, the U.S. attorney of
I don't remember which one it was, but whoever
Acosta.
it was.
I remember his last name was Acosta. He now did something with the Trump administration. I don't know if he still is or he was one of the ones who got fired, but there was a backdoor deal where the FBI had built a whole case, and he made a backdoor deal and let Jeffrey Epstein walk. And those victims never really got their day in court because of that. And so it's just like, okay, so that was okay. And he made a deal with someone who let a monster off. But Natasha, you can't work in Fort Pierce because maybe your cousin might get, like, picked up for something and you're going to let them off. So it annoys me that those rules are only put in place just to keep certain people out.
Right. Because, I mean, so what if I do want to let my cousin off? Like, that should be a perk of the job. Like, because y'all do it. Like, if your child gets arrested, the inside thing is we'll call us first before, like, the person's actually processed. Once they tell you that their dad is a police officer or their uncle or whatever. So, miss me with all of that. But they also told somebody else who's a state attorney in that jurisdiction that I'm too liberal. I was trying to fake like I was kind of conservative, but I didn't do a good job.
Well, I don't know if you've seen that St. Lucie County court or judicial system is on the map for the two disparities in the cases where the young men have the exact same charges,
same background,
everything, and one got 2 years. The only thing that's
different is their race, their skin color.
Right. So
same judge.
So good job, St. Lucie County.
Yeah. So it's frustrating when people are just like, well, can you give me some examples? Can you explain it to me? I mean, I'm not saying that I don't, want to be on your side, but I mean, how do you expect me to understand if I've never experienced something like that? Like, bro, what? So I'm done. I, crossed that day off on the map as my last day of offering any information like that because it's so readily available. Like, you don't even have to pull up, a transcript from 400 different trials and read it to understand. It's nothing that involves a lot of work. It literally is, you can go on YouTube and just play video after video and get it. You can just listen to, your friends talking on their story about what they're going through or whatever. But you can't just pretend like there's not enough out now, especially to let you at the very minimum empathize and say, like, this is what y'all were. I'm sorry I didn't get it before.
And I'm going to speak to specifically the people who, I see a lot of you out there that have family members that are police officers, and so you're acting as if you can't question them or you can't ask for any type of reform, or you have to support wholeheartedly because you have a family member, or you're like, I'm not going to go against the police. And so my father is a police officer, or was a police officer. He's retired now, thank God. But he was in law enforcement my whole entire life. And so number one, I knew as a little girl, I knew that his life could be taken. I knew that it was a dangerous job, but I never once questioned that because that was a choice he made. That was he really wanted to be a police officer. That was his dream job. That's what he loved to do. I saw the joy of him going to work every day. I always tell people that, like, I had a parent that had a job that they loved to do and they had passion for it. And so I always admired that in him. And so he chose that. Like, I never was like, be nice to my dad because, like, he's out there and he's risking his life. No, he chose to do that. And so even though I prayed that he would come home every night, I'm not looking at other people saying you need to treat him with white gloves when he pulls you over. You know, like he has the training for that. The person that he's pulling over doesn't have the training for that. So that's one thing I think you need to acknowledge, is that you need to trust the person who chose, that person in your family, if it's your father, your brother, or whoever that chose to be in law enforcement, trust that that's the job that they chose to do and that they're trained to do that. And that it also makes their job harder when you support and protect people who aren't doing the job correctly. So like, I wouldn't want my dad out there with a lunatic who's just like firing anytime someone looks at him the wrong way, because then that makes his job harder. Then when he makes the next traffic stop, you know, the person is jittery, you know, he's jittery. Like, it's just a shit show. So like, I think that we need to stop. You know, when you protect those people, you're making the job harder for your family member, who's going out there, who's putting the uniform on and really trying to serve and protect. I know a lot of the police union here in Palm Beach County supported the officer who killed Corey Jones. And it was like, that's a murderer. You should have made a clear distinction between what you do as a police officer and what he did. But instead they wanted to say, no, we support him wholeheartedly, he didn't murder. And so I think when you do that, that's really dangerous, and you're not serving police officers.
And I think that that's why this whole thing comes where we're just like F12, because we can't see that divide. We can't see enough officers saying like, hey, don't get it twisted. You know, you don't see the black officers coming out in full force saying like, at the end of the day, like, I was black before I was a police officer, so I am supporting this cause, but I want you to know that when I conduct a traffic stop or when I encounter this type of situation, this is not what we do. This is not how we were trained. And if I ever saw this, I would have an issue with it. Like, you don't, I mean, one or two cops have spoken up. So that's where the F12 comes from, because it just seems like, okay, y'all are so concerned about, you know, this brotherhood or whatever, that you really don't get what people are mad about. Like, you can't do such blatant, like, this stuff is blatantly wrong, and then you don't show your divide or say like, no, that's not cool, and then you expect us to be like, well, it's not all cops, well, blue lives matter too. Right. I can't say none of that, because y'all lumping together. Right. You're not dividing yourself, y'all lumping together.
And we saw it so clear with the George Floyd video, because there's one cop who's the bad apple, who's killing George Floyd, and the others sit and just watch.
Well, no, two were on his back as well, contributing to it. And then the other one is like, stay back, stay back, stay back. So all four of them were complicit in the murder. They contributed directly. But even if there were like other ones just kind of like standing over like, you part of the problem too. Like, you need to be like, what are you doing? Like, y'all should be shocked. Like, well, get up. Like, he doesn't even look like, what is wrong with you?
I've gone over it a million times in my head, because one of the officers, they said it was his 4th day on the job. And so I was just like, I mean, okay, was he scared to question the officer that was superior to him? But I was like, but as a human being, forget officer, forget your job, forget whatever. As a human being, when you see another human being struggling, there's not something in you that would be like, stop.
Even if you're scared, like, doesn't something say like, I can't sit here and watch this? Right. Like, how do you just like stay on this person's back and he's crying for his mom and saying that he can't breathe? Like, that's absurd to me. So that's why we scream for things like defund the police, and that's why we're pushing to abolish, because it's just such a corrupt system where even if you see something wrong, you're too afraid to speak out against it, because the system is the problem. If it was one bad cop, then the other 3 would have been like, bro, get up. Like, what is wrong with you?
There wouldn't be fear to speak out.
He would have been, if he was the outlier, the bad apple, then the other good apples would have been like, nah, bro, you messing up our look here. Like, move. But no one did that. And then they support them, and then they come out and they say like, well, what about us? And well, we're gonna quit too because you took a knee, and we're gonna do. So they band together, so then we can't support y'all as a whole because you're not speaking out. So, and then I think that like for the kids, because I was in Fort Pierce yesterday, so I saw like the Palm Beach news or whatever, and there were 3 little girls on the news, and their dads were police officers. So they were speaking about like giving their opinion about what's going on, and these are little kids. And I was like, first of all, y'all are disgusting for putting them little kids on that TV like that. And they're sitting there thinking that like they're coming on to defend their fathers, who are, like you said, chose this job. They're adults, they're doing this job, and you got these 3 little girls on here, and they're saying and 2 of them were black, and they're saying like, it makes me really upset when people say this because, we're concerned about my dad's safety and I'm concerned about this, and it just makes me sad because it's not true. Their dads need to teach them that, like, baby, I don't want you to worry about me because I'm a good cop. I go out there and this is what I do. This is what my job is. But those things that you're seeing and hearing about, we're going to change the system because that's not okay. So I don't want you to think that they're bullying these cops or that they're coming against all cops. They're trying to fix the system so that more cops like me are patrolling the streets and less cops like that, or no cops like that. Those are the types of conversations. Why you let these kids sit there? And then one of the girls was like, we see everything on social media, so we see everything that's going on and we see everything that they're saying about our dads. They're not talking about your dad unless your dad one of them officers. They ain't talking about it specifically. They're either talking about all police as a whole, or they're talking about the ones who they have seen or know have been involved with this BS. So that made me so mad. Like, it made me angry to like see them putting these little kids, like parading them in front of the news to like be like, so then people who are trying to look for reasons to support that can be like, oh, look at these poor little kids. Their dads aren't bad. You don't even know the dads. Their dads aren't there.
They knew what they were going to get with that story, so they did it on purpose.
They should be shaming themselves. Just shaming.
But, I mean, so 0 to 100, we're in support of defunding the police. I would say with the side note of just we just need an overhaul. I don't know if it needs to be like done away with in a whole new system. I just know that there needs to be a complete overhaul of everything. I think we should invest more in the community and in other agencies. I think we need to invest more in the officers that we're actually putting out there. I don't know what that looks like per se, but we need to invest more, period, in our communities and the police we're putting in our communities, the services.
And maybe it needs to be like a bigger issue or something that's it's considered beyond just within the police how that money's allocated and what's allowed and what's not allowed. So I don't think that it's okay for the police chief to be making buku dollars and then we're going to cut the salaries, because I saw something that said the police salaries have gone down over the last 10 years, but the funding's gone up. So it's like, I mean, same thing with correctional officers, because the private prisons, they're making billions off of inmate. That's all. Let me stop. But so I am glad that we're in support of it, and I just encourage everyone to please just do the research, or if you have someone that you know, a friend, a family member, or just someone like on your social media, and they're screaming defund the police, abolish the police, instead of you just trying to find something against it because it doesn't fit with what you're used to, like, we really need to get to a place where we can expand our thinking, our thought processes. Like, we need to make it like make this trend, okay, y'all? Make it to where it's okay for you to say like, nah, I ain't down with that. Do some research, have conversations with people, and then be like, okay, I see.
Right.
It needs to be okay to change your minds. Right. Like, I mean, because from the first time that we had this conversation, Serena was coming from a place as the daughter of a police officer.
I was like, I don't know if that's even going to work. I don't think that's going to have the outcome that we really want. Maybe we shouldn't defund them because, like, it's not going to the police officers anyway, so they're going to cut their salary and it's going to make it worse. Right.
Because you've heard your dad's perspective, that's a valid perspective. I know F12. So while at first I wasn't even at a place, like, I remember the first like Zoom conference that I was on, and they were like, no, abolish, like, not defund, abolish. And I'm like, oh, how are we gonna do that? Like, it was just like, and I was like, wow, that just seems so strong. I was like, well, wow, they're really like adamant about this. And someone said like, yeah, I get it, but it's not something that could just happen overnight. She said, pause. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to correct him, because he said that's not something that can happen overnight. It is absolutely is something that can happen overnight. And I was like, you just gonna release everybody from the prison and just like say all police, you go home? That was shocking to me. But from that conversation, for it being so shocking, but for her to be so like, yes it can, it's like, okay, well, she's not just coming from a place of like, I just pulled this out the sky, it's just this idea that I had. Right. This has to be based on something, some kind of experience, some kind of research or whatever. So then I started to like look into it, and I still haven't even gotten as deep into it as I want to, but just that like experience from seeing like how passionate she was about it, and then seeing other people be like, I'm like, I abolished them. like, I don't say I liked him. I mean, F12, but like we, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, but you just need, everyone needs to get to a place where we are having these conversations, because this is not going away. This is not going to be something that we just talk about for a little while, and then everyone that just wants all black people to just shut the hell up, then they'll just be like, okay, they done yet? All right, good. We can get back to our systematic BS that we've been on and they've been dealing with for all these years. That's not happening this time. This is different. So you might as well get with it. And when I say get with it, choose your side. This is not some neutral situation. And even with police funding, like this is clear cut. And someone said to me, like, it was actually a troll probably, but someone responded on something. I get so many trolls lately. Nicki Minaj trolls came from me the other day. It was really stressful.
Nicki Minaj?
Girl,
Whoa.
I gotta stop commenting on people.
I
gotta stop commenting on these people posts, but I commented on the Shade Room.
Oh, okay.
And about, that was like, why do people support this foolishness? And girl, her little trolls went in. They were putting unicorns and rainbows on my pictures. And I couldn't block them fast enough. But anyways, someone said something about how like the police kill way more white people every year, and I was like, so why you ain't mad then? Shouldn't you be mad too?
Right, I've seen that argument.
Shouldn't you be mad? Why you ain't out there? You can feel however you feel about Black Lives Matter, but why you ain't out there protesting against? Why you not calling for defunding police? Why you ain't mad? So shut up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the point that we're at right now is that I don't think any solution is off the table. I think we need to take a real hard look at every single solution. Even if you're like, because like when you heard the lady say, we need to abolish, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But you look into it.
It's harsh and it's so different from what we know.
Right. But I don't think we're at the point where nothing is off the table. We need to look at every single solution. We need to look at every nook and cranny. We need to go down every rabbit hole, and we need to see what is really going to work, because the mess that we're in right now, I mean, I think I heard a report that this could possibly be going to the UN at this point. Like
I've been researching that, and I'm so glad to hear that Africa's stepping in. So I've been researching that. I took some international classes. I actually got my certificate in international law from law school, but it's so complicated. So I've been looking into, first of all, the United States has violated every and we've signed and ratified the treaty that applies to protecting human rights and everything against racism and oppressing a certain class based upon their race. Everything, like, they do that. They do that. But the issue is enforcing treaties. When it's international, you have to get other countries involved, or else it becomes like, okay, well, y'all did this wrong. Police yourselves. Like, recognize it.
And I think we're at that point. We need other
countries are getting involved.
Step in.
It's happening. I think it said something about, I don't remember how many countries, but however many countries in Africa they all came together and they were like, this ain't okay what they're doing over there. So someone actually said that they have a feeling that Obama is going to be like the president or the leader of the UN, and I can rock with that, because I think that that's what's ultimately going to come. This is going to turn into a global issue, and they're going to decide, y'all let that man run the country for 4 years. Y'all ain't ready. Y'all don't know what y'all doing. We gonna step in and we gonna help y'all out a little bit, and that's so embarrassing.
I mean, and I was so proud to see other countries getting involved and marching, but at the same time, it's shameful, because it's like other countries are marching and protesting
against their own stuff too. So there's racial inequality over there too. So I mean, like, did you see the video from? We're getting a little bit off topic, but the video from it was in the UK, I think, but this guy was knocking those white supremacists out. So they have those same issues there. It's just worse. So I've had those conversations with friends that live in London right now, that are from London, friends that live in London. I've had conversations with friends that live in Canada. And one of them was basically like, it's nothing like what y'all going through, but we have like the same kind of stuff going on here, but it's just on such a smaller scale. And I'm like, it always involves with, but it ain't nothing with like what y'all going through. And it's always like, I'm so sorry because I can barely deal with the issue I'm dealing with in my country. And it's just like, bro, like, it's sad to see that it's a worldwide issue, because these colonizers literally came and they have poisoned the entire country to think that white is right and black is whack. And how stupid is that? That's why I feel like we should have just kept our own stuff. And it's crazy for me saying that, and I'm biracial, but I mean, I was raised black, and at the end of the day, my race is black.
That may be another episode, because I sat down and had a conversation with my aunts the other day, talking about, back in the day in the city where they lived, like, how did they feel about how it was back then versus how it is now? They're like, well, we had our own this, we had our own store, we had this, and we were like, did you think it was better? And they said, I was actually shocked, and they were like, yeah, it was better back then when we were like, we had our own, and we had our own community was strong and vibrant, and people owned their own thing, and now it's completely different. And so I think that's another conversation that should be had.
I think we should talk about that, like integration versus segregation, or whatever, however we want to like tackle it, but essentially talk about that, and not from a sense of like hindsight, because of course we can look back and be like, they shouldn't have did that. But I remember learning about the Harlem Renaissance, and I was like, why y'all ain't just keep it like this? This is amazing. Like, y'all had ish popping, like everything was great, and it was because they were like, ew, y'all are gross, don't come in our stuff, here's your little crappy, you know, water fountain, and here's your little crappy section to sit or whatever. And it was supposed to be separate but equal, but it was never equal. And that's why it's like, it's so crazy, because now the thing is like, oh, y'all fighting for black supremacy. Bro, we just been trying to like make it equal. And that's why I don't think we should have fooled with y'all. We should have made it really been separate, and then y'all could have seen. And then y'all would have really been mad when your little kids want to come over there and hang out with us, because we cool.
And one thing, like, I've always been so proud to be, I mean, there's so many reasons to be proud to be black, but one of the reasons I've always been proud is because I feel like we always like are able to take like nothing and just make it something. Like we can take like dirt, and then you'll look at it and you're like, whoa, they made a big old
piece of art, like a whole mural out of dirt. Like, how they did that?
Like, what? And so I think it's always been the goal to be like, well, just give them whatever and push them over there, and then they leave and they come back and they're like, well, wait, where did all this come from? Right. You know? And I feel like that's where Black Wall Street came up, because they were like, let's just give them whatever, and then come back and be like, wait a minute, what is this? Like, what do they have going on? They're thriving with nothing. We gave them nothing and they're thriving. And so
like, literally nothing.
Yeah. And so I think when we have that conversation, to me, I would be like, well, how do we prevent that from happening again? Because you can give us whatever and we're going to make it like great. That's just what we do. But protecting it, like keeping it from what happened before.
I think that's why it's not just a us fight. I feel like other races, other cultures should be fighting for equality too, because they should be like, no, don't separate yourselves, no, stay, we love you. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that's how my daddy feels. He'd be like, this is BS. And I was even like, I think that, you know, if I was a different race, I would probably be mad too. And it's like, nah, like, this is unacceptable, because it's just been happening for so many years, and it's just different. Like, we never chose. So it's like we've always been the bottom. And it's like, I just, like, the more I think about it and talk about it, the more I think that, like, police there's no way to fix it, because of the fact that, like, they were created to police us, and like they've consistently like continued doing that, and that's why it's acceptable. Like, it's so frustrating to see how they treat those protesters. It's so frustrating to see.
It's disgusting,
and it's okay. Like, why is this okay? But then other parties can protest and it's fine. So, and I don't think that all the bad cops were like, okay, you down for the call? You gonna do it? All right, cool. You can come. You gonna chicken out, move, man. I'm talking about you gotta bust them in the head with it. You gonna do that? All right, come on. But don't, come on. You know, that's not how it goes. Whoever's in charge says, this is what we're doing. This is how it's gonna go. That's the only way you can get it to where they're all doing the same thing. Right. It was like they give a secret like whistle or a secret call, and then they all just start busting out with the tear gas and busting out with this or popping people in the heads, pushing people down. Like, there's no way that you can just still say that this is just like one bad apple, a couple bad apples. It's a messed up system. It's a messed up system, and that's why I don't think you can fix it.
Cops really believe that they're doing what they've been trained to do, and they were doing their job. I just watched interviews about Rodney King, the Rodney King beating, and the cops that were there, and they literally, from their interviews, just really thought, they're like, this is what we were trained to do. We didn't get to that call and just started acting like it wasn't an isolated situation. This is how we've been trained. We were told to hit them with the baton or whatever it is.
And they were trained to put the knee on the neck. Right. They were trained to choke. So how can you still say that it's a bad apple? Like, you just
no, it's the system.
If we can't have apples, then okay, then we just got to get rid of the apples. Like, all the apple trees got to cut down. We got other fruit. We'll be okay. Okay. And I'm sure they got plenty of frozen apples stored somewhere to make some apple juice. And you just going to have to get over it, because that's just how I feel. And you going to find a substitute.
And the fact that we use that phrase, it's just it's a few bad apples.
They
no,
use
it's
that
like,
phrase.
it's a tumor. Like, it's like, if you
That's
have
what
one
I said. I was
tumor,
like, this is a cancer.
if you have a tumor in your body, you don't care if it's 1, 2, like, get it out. Like, we need to cut that out. It's dangerous. It will kill the whole entire body. Like, we need to get rid of it. And that's how we need to start looking at it. Even just the phrase, a few bad apples, is so like,
I'm so over it. And it's like, I mean, so even I'm speaking from attorneys, but I can give the same example for doctors. I can call people and give the same perspective from, you know, like the position of like a CPA or whatever. But as an attorney, there's no like, oh, but you know, just she said she didn't know. Like, no, you misappropriate some funds, you might lose your license for an entire year. You do it twice, you're disbarred. So that means all the money, you might still be paying on your student loans, and they don't care. So no one comes in and says like, oh, but they just need more training. Oh, but just give them more money. No, that doesn't happen, because we're professionals and we have to pay for our own training. And I also don't like the fact that there's no, so funding police brutality cases is $1 billion business. So banks issue loans and then they get paid a higher percentage back from, nothing comes out of the police officers' pension, paycheck, nothing. That's the only profession, I don't even call them professionals based upon the fact that they don't have to have training. They're police. Like, I don't lump them with professionals because they don't have to go to school for as long as any other professional. There's no professional degree required. There's no professional training. There's no professional system of checks and balances, for lack of a better term now. But we have to have malpractice insurance. They don't have to have any kind of insurance. They don't have to have anything.
That's crazy.
So they just get to take, receive, and then there's nothing to incentivize them to be decent.
Right.
And it should come out of all
That's
of them.
sad.
So that if you over there doing something wrong, I'm like, oh girl, I'm 2 years away from my pension. Move your knee a little bit. Girl, don't play. You about to mess up my pension, child. I got 3 kids in college. You better move. So there's nothing to incentivize it. So
it's true.
And I even find myself, like, as an attorney, we have an ethical duty to report, you know, when we know other attorneys are doing stuff wrong. And sometimes you'd be like, I kind of don't want to know what's really going on, because it's like you don't want to get involved, and like sometimes the other person just be so corrupt or whatever, and you just be like, I don't really know, he kind of doing something wrong. And it's just because you are just so afraid of the repercussions for you getting involved in something like that, I'd rather go over there and talk to them and be like, hey, you know, like, you can't do that, and like, if you do that, then that could be in trouble. You could get in trouble for that, right? Because of the ethical duty. Like, why don't cops have that same ethical duty to speak out? And so that's why I just think the whole system just has to like go away. And even if the government puts, like, if it's not just private security that comes into play and the government does, and it needs to be called something else, it needs to be something different. But I feel like you just like, sometimes like a house, like sometimes you can't remodel it, you just gotta bulldoze it and then just rebuild on the same land. And I think that's where we are with this.
I don't know what the solution is. I mean, that very well could be the solution. I just think we need to look at every possible, like, at this point it's time. You just like, we need to take the time, whatever we're going to do, now's the time to do it. And we need to look at we need to call in who we need to call in to look at it, get every point of view, study other countries, what's happening over there, and see what will work, because it's just not what we have isn't working. It hasn't been working. It hasn't ever worked.
And I think that's a great way to put it. I think that's like one of the best things that has been said in this entire podcast with regard to just be open, like, understand that this has to be like a total revamp, and you can't come in and be like, okay, when we rebuild the house, it's got to be just like the old house, but it's just going to be new walls. No, you have to like take in from everyone. Someone want to come in and explain, you know, how solar panels work. So what if you never had solar panels before? Listen and understand, and then make a determination whether or not that's something that could help with whatever you're trying to accomplish. So I think that's like a great way to end that.
And then we need leaders who are going to enforce it and not be corrupt and not try and, you know, even when we get whatever new system it is that we do get, if we get one, that it needs to be I mean, we need people who are going to oversee it to make sure that it's actually working and there aren't loopholes like what happened before. So on that
I think that has to be built into it too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like there needs to be a nationwide system that allows for the reporting of officers, and then the ability for regular people to just, the same way sex offenders are tracked, then officers need to be tracked that same way. 0 to 100.
Yeah.
What took you 0 to 100?
This whole, like, the pandemic, George Floyd, racism, trolls on social media, like, all of it.
I don't think I was ever at 0, but I'll give an example of what has been happening lately is that I'm having to have conversations, and sometimes, you know, you be tired from work or you be tired from whatever. So someone's saying some foolishness and you just be like, well, so stupid, whatever, or I disagree, but I'm committed now to having those exhausting, difficult, whatever conversations that you may have just kind of been like, okay, well, agree to disagree. There's no agree to disagree now, because you can have a conversation with someone and that might change 10 people, because now you might offer them some insight, like you said, you know, being open to all ideas. Maybe that person is open to new ideas and you just like shut it off, and then they didn't have the opportunity to hear your side, so now they're going to keep having that same type of point of view with everyone else. So I actually had to have that conversation with my grandfather, because a lot of people look at, you know, they're old school. They come from a place of like, just
let it go, just leave it. It is what it is. Yeah,
I get
I've
it.
heard that so many times.
Like, just don't, try to just, do this and just make it easier. And we were talking about Rashard in Atlanta that just got killed, and he did fight with them, and he took the taser. And I knew when I saw the video, I was like, I can hear him now. Well, he was resisting. Well, well. And so I just like, it triggered me when that first person said it to me. And I went from 0, so I'm just like chilling, and in the conversation it literally went from 0 to 100, and I was like, no, we not finna do this. I'm sick of this, I'm sick of that. I had to have like a stern conversation, and I had to give examples of where we comply with everything and that's still the same result. And why I don't care if he took a taser, I don't care if we resisted the police officers. Neither of those carry a death sentence, and it is illegal for them to shoot him in the back when he is running away from them, because he is no longer posing a threat, even if he was at the time that he had a taser. They say that tasers are non-deadly. That's their defense when they tase people, that they're non-deadly. So him having a taser, why do you get to match that or meet him with the gun? And shoot him 3 times in the back as he's running away? Like, I don't know what, I'm not a police officer. I don't know what 12 be doing, what their little, protocols are. But I know that when it's like a high-speed chase and you cross over into someone else's county, it's a protocol for that. You got to dispatch them and say, hey, like, join it or something. I know it's a protocol. Because this one time, this guy had threw some change at my car, and I was like, police, you gotta come. And then when we crossed over, they were like, oh, we gotta switch to the other, like, jurisdiction. And I was like, well, switch, because this man threw some change at my car. So that was a very long time ago. But it was, I even had like a little voice and was like, don't, like, you getting a little like aggressive, like this your granddaddy.
Right.
But I was like, I can't. So I'm like, to the boys that I'm saying to him, like, I can't. And I'm like, no, this is unacceptable. And he said to me, and this broke my heart, if he gets pulled over by the police and they say, get out of the car, he said, I got to get out of the car. And he said, and if they say, reach for my wallet or get my driver's license, I got to do it. And he said, if I don't do it, I said, are you about to say that they have a right to shoot you? And he said, well, yeah, if I don't comply. It broke.
That's a lot of people's thinking. A lot of people think that way.
Oh my gosh, it broke. And I know that, and I said, that is not your fault that you think that way, but that's unacceptable for you to think that if you don't do every little thing just perfect for this police officer,
they have the right to shoot
that
you.
He is going to shoot you, and that it'll be justified because I just should have complied. And I said, that's not okay, and it's not your fault, and I promise you I'm going to do everything I can to fix it.
Yeah.
So that's how we were able to like come full circle. But it was just like, but you're not listening. I'm saying he wasn't complying. Well, he was resisting, and if he just would have complied, stop. That, 'cause you blaming him, and he didn't do if he did whatever wrong, he didn't do nothing to deserve being shot in his back as he ran away. And they knew he was intoxicated, so obviously he's not thinking right. So that was my like 0 to 100 moment, where I really was just like do like all the way to 100. Oh, just over an hour. Yeah. Pretty good.
Yeah, it was a good conversation.
Yeah, it was good.
But yeah, I think it was a good conversation. We have so much more to talk about. I
know.
Think,
we
just from
like
this one
jumped
conversation.
all back. It was so hard to stay on topic because there is just no. You can't write a report on this. You can't just, okay, bullet point number 1. We're going to discuss this because there's just so much that just falls into what's going on right now.
And there's so much there's so much, I feel like it's personal to me. Like I was having conversations with people on social media and some people were just saying things and I'm saying, wait, but you don't understand. Like you may be looking at this like as a person, you've never been involved, you've never experienced racism, you're just looking at the protests, you're looking at the riots, you're complaining about this and that. I'm saying this is personal to me. Like I have a son, I have a husband, I have other men in my family that I fear for their life. My husband has had police officers pull guns on him at least 3 times in his life, starting at the age of 16, and he's not a criminal, has never committed a criminal offense, and so why? I don't want my son to have that same story. I'm fighting now. This is personal to me. Like, I'm being selfish about it, really, because I'm like, I don't want my son to encounter any of this. I want this mess to be figured out before he even gets of age to even walk out the house without me. So,
and I don't have kids, and it's still personal for me.
Right.
I mean, this guy posted on his story, and I think he posted like his first encounter when he first had the police pull a gun on him, and it was like, how old were you when it happened to you? And it was just like 17, 12, and then I was like, oh, I was 16, and it's like my experience, and it's like, dang, like I don't react the same way, but I don't really react the same way to anything, but like I can just imagine that never happening to you, but happening to so many people that you literally like almost piss yourself when the police approach you.
Right.
So these videos with these kids holding their hands up and crying to the police like, are you gonna shoot me too? And they say like, oh, that's so sad and that's normal. That's how it used to be a thing for like us to say kids like, you better stop it, we're gonna call the police, and the child be like,
straighten up, because it's like the boogeyman to some kids.
It is exactly the boogeyman. It's not like, oh well, they're just doing that because they're gonna go to jail. No, they think like, oh my god, the police gonna come and it's gonna be the end of my whole world at like 4 years old. But that became like the monster that everyone, and then people be like, oh well, that's not fair. No. Okay, I saw something that said they don't make songs about F the fire department.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is a thing because it's a thing.
It's
like
a thing,
anyone who still feels like they always want to make it about race, just miss me with all of that and just get on that side. Because again, like
I always think to myself, like, did you think all the black people, like majority of the black people in the United States got together like on a private Facebook group or something, and we just said, let's just make this up today.
Right.
Let's just like all come together and let's all just say the same exact thing.
Or the class of people that's known for, like you said, taking nothing and making it into not just something, but something amazing. That they're the type of people to always just blame someone else. That's not us. No. That's a different class of people, and it ain't us. And that's why I love soul food. So people are like, girl, why you still eat chitlins? Because
this is not the first time you mentioned chitlins on this podcast.
First of all, chitlins is my favorite food, and I don't care. I'm glad that people don't like it because it's more for me, okay? Because you clean and cut out all the nasty stuff in that big old bucket, and you only get a little bit. So I'd be so excited when my grandmother cooks it because I'd be like, oh yeah, y'all don't like it? Oh yeah, it's gross, don't eat it. But I embrace that type of food. First, I grew up on it. So, it tastes good to me, but then when people are like, oh, well, we educated now, we know better, and that's just not good for me. First of all, I'm healthy, okay? Because I don't eat a lot of sugar, and I don't drink sodas and stuff like that normally. This was a 0.
It was a Coke Zero, so there's no sugar.
But, once I learned like the history, I was like, I'm always gonna eat chitlins and hog maws, and I don't like tripe, but because
so part of that taking nothing from
they gave
nothing.
The scraps to the slaves. They gave the stuff that they thought was supposed to be thrown in the garbage. And what did we do as black people? What did our ancestors do? They took that and they figured out a way to make it taste good. So now everybody eating oxtail, which I don't like because now it'd be like $15 for a pack of oxtail. I just learned how to cook them, girl. They so good too.
Oh, okay. Well, you have to cook it for me.
Okay, you like oxtail then?
Yeah.
Okay. Girl, I can make good oxtail now. But so that's why like I embrace things like that about my culture. So, but y'all don't go out there and eat chitlins now because I don't want them to start being expensive too. Good. I mean, they stink. I don't like when my grandma cleans them when I'm about to be in the house, but I could eat a whole batch of them by myself. I love them. Oxtail, turkey neck, all the stuff that people think is gross. I usually like it, except liver and tripe. It's nasty. Blech.
On that note, we've had a good conversation and there is more to come. We were on a bit of a hiatus, but we're back.
We're back, man.
So
we're back.
Cheers to that. We're out of our drinks, which is always.
Maria, we still got some more catching up to do. Dang, I think I got work to do. But whatever, we're definitely coming back. So we have some stuff that we know we need to talk about, but of course we always ask for y'all's input. We always, ask for your suggestions, and we always ask for you to share things that we can also celebrate. So we're gonna keep the same program. Start off with our something to celebrate, pop our bottle or cheers or whatever, talk about our main topic, and then 0 to 100. So if you have something that we can share from you, I mean, they don't always have to hear about our stuff. Like, we can share yours too. So hit us up. Let's get this thing popping. I almost started my own podcast too. It's gonna be called Lip Gloss.
Ooh.
Yeah, I might still like talk about stuff on it, but this just better with us.
Yeah. We make a good team.
All right. On that note, cheers. Stay up. Stay safe.